right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the world's most exciting classroom. My name is Joe Gabrowski, and I'll be your host for today. I'll start off with an apology for the strange start time. It has to do with the fact that tomorrow I will be flying to South Africa to catch up with the Oosterschelde and the DARWIN200 team. So I'm kind of running around everywhere trying to get some loose ends tied up, get all the camera gear going, the satellite units, and all that other fun stuff so that we can connect from really cool places in the field over the next few weeks. We will be announcing those dates shortly. The one thing holding us up is a lot of the activities will be out on the ocean. So diving with the sharks, the live scuba dives we're going to try and do, out with the South African penguins in the colony. All those things are going to be dependent on the weather. So the swell and what's going on. We won't really know that until about a week before. We'll get kind of a good idea of what they're expecting. And then we'll start announcing some of those dates for that live action from the field. Where is the ship right now? Always worth taking a quick look at the map. Let's do that. I'll share my screen, make it nice and big. So spoiler alert, the Oosterschelde is right where we left it last week. It is still in Cape Town at the V&A waterfront. You can zoom in a little bit closer there. You can see False Bay down there. I will be down in this area as well, Hans Bay. So I'm really excited to get out there. And then I'll also be up in this area, up in the North Greater Kruger area to start the adventure. If we back up, you can see where we've come from, having crossed the Atlantic, and you can see where we're heading at the end of April. We'll make our way for St. Helena, then Ascension, and then all the way up to the Azores. And then in July, we will return to Falmouth, and we'll have big celebrations there, of course. So there's a little catch up on what we are up to. So let's come back from that screen share and let's get right into today's event. We have two things to do today. We're going to have Sarah Kienle join us in just a moment. And then last night with the world's most exciting classroom for Australia side of the world, we connected live with the National Kiwi Hatchery in New Zealand. So I have a video clip that we'll share from that. It was really, really cool. We got to see one of the little baby kiwis just under 2 weeks old. So we'll get to that shortly. But before that, I thought it'd be really fun to hang out with Sarah Kienle. So I've had the pleasure of hosting Sarah a few times live from Antarctica, which was pretty cool. She is a researcher, a biologist. She studies leopard seals, and she gets to go out into the field to places like Chile, to places like Antarctica, and be there with those big, beautiful predators. So you know that when we were visiting South Georgia, we had a leopard seal pull up on shore and chill out. The scientists there were going nuts because that's so rare and doesn't happen a lot. So they were really excited to get those photos and such. So having Sarah with us to talk about the leopard seals, about the research that she does, following their lives, I think is going to be really awesome today. So I'm going to grab Sarah from backstage now. Here we go. Hey, Sarah, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good, good. It's really exciting to have you, and the timing couldn't be better with our leopard seal sightings recently.
Yeah, I loved the photo that you sent me. We're going to actually add it to our collection to try and see if we can figure out who that particular individual is.
Yeah, very cool. Well, let me know if you need more photos because, yeah, we took a lot.
Now I would love more photos.
Excellent. I will send you some full body shots, and maybe we can figure out who that was hauled up there.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, it's awesome to see you. We have classrooms joining us from Canada and the US today, few sneaking in from the UK as well. So they're going to fire away with some questions when the time comes. But for now, let's let you take over for a little bit.
Yeah, that sounds great. All right, so I'm going to share my PowerPoint. Let's make sure that you can see that. Can you confirm since I can't see you?
That looks good.
Perfect. All right. Hello, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. And honestly, I love questions. So my goal is going to be to kind of rapid fire go through some of the research we've been doing with leopard seals. And then I would love to take as many questions as I possibly can. I'm talking to you right now from the University of Rhode Island. I'm in Kingston, Rhode Island in the United States. But most of my work when I work with leopard seals is in the Southern Hemisphere. So I do a lot of work in South America and Antarctica as well, working on leopard seals. So my research group, the thing that I'm really interested in is studying top predators. Leopard seals are one of those top predators that feed at the top of the food chain. I'm really curious about how top predators are adapting to changes across their environments worldwide. And if I'm going to be honest, leopard seals are my favorite species that I work with. So I'm not going to be able to see you, but my question to you is, have you seen any of these movies? Have you seen Happy Feet 2, Penguins in Madagascar, or 8 Below? And if you have, that means that you've seen pictures or images of leopard seals before. They are always the scary seals in movies. And part of that is because they are top predators. So very much like our lions, our tigers, our grizzly bears, our white sharks of the world, they feed at the top of the food chain on other large prey items. But if you've seen movies and there's a scary seal in it, I'm going to go ahead and bet it was a leopard seal. But here's what they actually look like outside of movies. Leopard seals are these amazing animals. They're named for their coats because they have that spotted pattern. One of my favorite facts that we've learned about their coats and their spots is that very much like human fingerprints, their spotting patterns are unique to each animal. So we can actually use photographs like the ones that y'all took in South Georgia to use those spotting patterns to try and match it up with previous photographs to identify individuals, which is pretty phenomenal. You can't do that for a lot of seal and sea lion species, especially ones that are just brown, like Galapagos fur seals and sea lions. Those ones, for example, you cannot tell individuals apart just by looking at them very easily. So even though leopard seals are in popular movies, that makes it seem like we know a lot about their biology. We don't. This is a top predator that we know very, very little about. Like, one of the things I like to point out is that we don't know if they need ice for survival. They're described as an Antarctic top predator, but we know that they're found in other areas outside of Antarctica, but we don't know if they depend on ice for survival. We don't really know where they have babies. We don't know how long moms stay with their pups. We know very little about how their diet changes between locations. So a lot of the work that my research group does is finding leopard seals and trying to describe basic aspects of their biology. So this is a picture from a drone that we took doing field work in southern Chile. I'm actually the one in the green jacket, and there's a leopard seal on the ice floe that we are looking at with binoculars. We're taking drone images. We're taking all sorts of photographs. And then if we can, and we were able to with this animal, we'll sneak up really close and get a small tissue sample. And our big question really is, how are leopard seals adapting to changes across the Southern Ocean? And I work with an amazing team of people around the world to do this work. None of it is by myself. It's always a team effort. We work with collaborators in Chile and Antarctica and Australia and New Zealand, all over the place, to try and figure out as much as we can about the biology of this very cool understudied animal. So leopard seals live in Antarctica, but they live outside of that too, and they're really hard to study. So I want you to just take 10 seconds, and I want you to just think about why leopard seals might be so difficult to study. So I'm going to count to 5 in my head so that you have time. Okay. So I want to tell you a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is that they live in remote areas. They're hard to get to. So for those of you on the DARWIN200 on the boat, it is challenging to get to the locations you've gone. And that's very true for researchers as well. So it's hard to find them. Another reason leopard seals are hard to study is that they don't live in groups. A lot of seals and sea lions will live in large colonies or come together at some time of the year where you can get lots of animals together. Leopard seals aren't like that as far as we know. If you see one, you're lucky, but very rarely will you see one or more in the same area at the same time. So being solitary makes it hard to find them. And then the last thing is that they spend most of their lives underwater. They're a marine mammal, so they come to the surface to breathe and to rest, but then they're chasing and finding all their food in the water. And all those things together make them really challenging. So what our team does to study leopard seals is everything we possibly can. We work with drones and cameras. We do necropsies, which are animal autopsies, where if an animal has died, we'll get all sorts of tissue samples and look at their bones and their muscles to figure out how big they were, how healthy they were, what might have been the cause of death. We do all sorts of genetics work to look at their DNA and how different animals are related to each other. We take tissue samples that we can use to figure out animal health, animal diet, all sorts of things about how the animal works. And we do all of this work with a lot of permits. So never should you just go out and approach a wild animal. Anytime we're working with leopard seals, it's because we've been really well trained and we're doing it with a lot of different permits that allow us to do that sort of work. And honestly, most of our time is spent literally looking for leopard seals. I can't tell you how much of my life has been spent looking through binoculars trying to find seals. They are hard to find. It turns out that they blend in with their environment. They're very well adapted for camouflage. And so I want to give you a kind of sense of what that looks like. So here I have two pictures, 1 and 2, and just in your classroom, wherever you are, I want you to try and figure out whether picture 1 or picture 2 has a leopard seal in it. I'm going to give you 2 seconds to decide. All right. Same thing with this one. All right, now you're going to choose between 3 and 4, and then I'll give you the answers, I promise. I want you to tell me if picture 3 has a leopard seal in it or if picture 4 has a leopard seal in it. And I can't remember if I put the answers. I didn't. Okay, so looking at these, the answer for 1 and 2 is picture number 2 has a leopard seal on it. It's on kind of the right side, and it almost looks like grayish, and there's a little mound. But it's really hard to tell leopard seals from dirty ice. So dirty ice or rocks on an iceberg very much look like a leopard seal. So we spend a lot of time debating whether we're looking at dirty ice or whether we're looking at seals. In pictures 3 and 4, number 3 is actually where our seal is. It's the round blob that looks like a rock. The thing that looks like a leopard seal in picture 4 is actually a rock. And that rock tricked me every single day I was in Antarctica looking for leopard seals because it looks so much like a sleeping seal. So I just want to kind of point out that it's not easy to find these animals even when you're in the field. And when we do find leopard seals, we take all sorts of samples and measurements so that we can learn as much as possible about each of these animals. So I just want to very briefly tell you some things that we've learned, and then I want to open it up to all of your questions. So one of the things that we've learned is that we used to think that leopard seals were mostly found just around Antarctica and some of the sub-Antarctic islands. What we've found from our research is that their range is much, much larger than we previously thought. In fact, in South Africa, there have been numerous reports of leopard seals, especially on small islands around South Africa. So it is entirely possible, not likely, but possible that you could see a leopard seal in South Africa. You can see leopard seals occasionally in Chile and Argentina and New Zealand and Australia. So they have a much larger range across the Southern Hemisphere than we previously thought. And that's why our team goes to Chile regularly to study leopard seals, even though we typically used to think of them as only being found in Antarctica. Another thing that we've learned is that males and females are not the same. In particular, one of my favorite facts about leopard seals is that females are larger than males. In fact, females are about 1.5 times larger than females. So that means that females, and these are very, very large animals. So a very large female is probably about 1,200 pounds. And an adult male would be around 600 to 700 pounds. So that's 500 kilograms for a female, around like 300 kilograms for a male. So we're getting these huge differences in body size. And what we've learned is that not only are there differences in size between males and females, but females feed on higher trophic level prey items. So they're eating the penguins, the other fur seals, they're eating big stuff. And in general, but not always, males seem to be feeding at lower levels on the food chain. So they're eating more krill and fish. And so it's been really cool to see these kind of dietary differences along with size. And so kind of a lot of what our work has shown, and a lot of other researchers as well, is that leopard seals are really important predators in the Southern Ocean. They have this really broad diet, and they're actually causing the decline of some of their prey populations. And so there's been some cool research showing in the South Shetland Islands off the Western Antarctic Peninsula that there's a colony of fur seals there that's decreasing, and that's because leopard seals are eating up to 80% of the pups each year. So these are top predators. and where they live and what they're eating is really important for understanding how entire ecosystems operate. And then we have a few big questions we're trying to answer as part of this research that we still don't know the answer to. One of them is we're trying to figure out what are their habitat requirements. We've figured out they have a much larger range than we previously thought. Do they need ice to survive? How are they going to do with climate change and environmental change and human habitats? We're curious about all of that. And also this work, what we're hoping is it'll help inform where protected areas are put for marine mammals and marine animals in the Southern Ocean. So for example, there's a marine protected area. You can think about that like a national park or a state park on land in the water, but there's these marine protected areas, and there's a proposed one around the Western Antarctic Peninsula. And we're hoping that some of our work will help say, yes, this is really important, not only for a variety of penguins and krill and whales, but this area is really important for leopard seals as well. Let's do all of the things we can to protect them. One of the other questions I'm really interested in is why females are larger than males. I can tell you that females are larger, but I can't tell you why yet. And so our team is doing a lot of work to try and figure out what is it about large females that allows them to be so successful. And then coming back to that original question, we're still doing a lot of work to try and figure out how leopard seals are adapting and responding to changing environments. All right, so with that, I'm going to end sharing my screen, if I can figure out how to do that, so that I can answer questions that you have about this work and anything about leopard seals.
All right, excellent. Well, Sarah, I'm so glad we were able to steal you today and get some really cool information on the leopard seal. And like a lot of things on our planet, we have so much more to explore and discover. There's a lot of secrets that those leopard seals are keeping. So yeah.
That's my favorite thing, right? Like it's getting to be a big explorer and learn new things about this really cool animal.
Okay. Well, to the classrooms who are joining us, don't be shy. Now's the time to use the chat sidebar. You can let us know where you're tuning in from. You can send in some questions to us as well. While those first questions start to come in, Sarah, while you're presenting, I pulled together a really quick Kahoot quiz for our students. So I'm going to share my screen. I am going to bring up the Kahoot. There we go. I am going to start it up. If you would like to join us to play this Kahoot today, you need to go to kahoot.it. Kahoot.it. Our pin number today is 318-4137. So kahoot.it, and then put in the pin 318-4137. If you have one-to-one tech, maybe you have a tablet or a Chromebook at your seat, you can enter that way and join us. If you don't worry. Your teacher could pop this up at the front of the room. You could shout out your answers to him or her. If you're at home, we always have home students hanging out. You can scan that QR code with your phone or your tablet, and it'll bring you right in. And if you just can't join with tech today, don't worry about it. You can still play along. You can still see how you do on the Kahoot. So I wait to see if we have a few classrooms who come in and join us today. We'll start off with a question, Sarah, and that question is, how are you following their lives when they're underwater?
That's such a good question. So we use a variety of ways to try and figure out what they're doing when they're underwater. One of the best ways that can give us the most information is by putting what we call a biologging instrument, or a tag for short, on an animal. So what that means is that instrument is usually glued to the head or to the back of a seal, and they collect data about where they go when they're underwater. So it sends information on their location, and it also sends information on how deep they're diving. So that's probably the best way we can figure out what they're doing underwater. Other ways we can do that without putting tags on animals is by using photo identification. So using photos like you took already of leopard seals at South Georgia, taking those photos, bringing them together and trying to identify individuals and see how they're moving between locations. It can be tricky, but it's a lot of fun to try and figure out.
All right. And then a follow-up came in. Do you ever retrieve the tags, or is it just kind of, they're going to fall off eventually?
Yeah, good question. The goal, the dream is to get the tag back, because if you get the tag back, you get about 10 times more data than if you have it transmitting through the satellite or like through cell phones data. So we would love to get the instruments back. Unfortunately, of the 21 tags I put on leopard seals, we got 0 back. These animals are really hard to find again. Some of the animals we saw once and then never again. Others, we saw them again, but they didn't have the instruments on them anymore. And so the nice thing about these sorts of tags is that seals lose their hair every year. They molt. And so the longest a tag could stay on would be a year. Otherwise, it's just going to fall off and it's like it never happened.
All right. Well, we've got a few classrooms who came in here and joined us. So let's get this Kahoot going. I am going to hit start. We'll get a nice countdown here. And then we're off to the races. So some multiple choice, some true or false. The quicker you put in the right answer, the more points you're going to get. Our first question is a multiple choice. What makes leopard seals difficult to study? Is it that they spend most of their time underwater, they don't live in groups, they live in remote areas, or is the best answer, in fact, going to be all of the above for this one? So let's see if we can get some answers locked in, and then, yeah, we'll go from there. A couple more seconds on the clock.
Yeah, it's unfair that I don't get to play this.
I think that would be definitely not fair. Okay, so there we go. Our first.
Oh, nice.
I just lost my screen. There we go. That's right. Oops, I think I messed that up. I clicked live in remote areas, but all of the above is absolutely the best answer. All three of them are good answers, but you can see when you make these on the fly that sometimes you click the wrong answer. It is all of the above. So a big shout out to the students who clicked the right answer and got that right. All right. That puts the yellow rabbit is in first place because they were the quickest to get their answer in. So let's go to our next question coming your way. This is some true or false action. We can ID leopard seals from their unique patterns. Is that true or is that false? From their unique spot patterns, we can identify them. You have a few more seconds to get your answer locked in, and then we'll see how we did. All right. So that is absolutely true. Just like leopards, whale sharks, and things like that, we can ID them from those patterns. That puts the daring stork into first place. We're going to go to our next question. Here we go. True or false? We know a ton about leopard seal biology. So true or false? We know a ton about leopard seal biology. Right. We didn't make it anywhere near 20 seconds that time. Great job, crew. Yeah, that is absolutely false. We still have so much left to learn. It sounds like you put together some pieces, but like, why is the female so much bigger and things like that? We got a lot to figure out. So last question coming your way for all the marbles. We've got the daring stork still holding down that top spot. A large female leopard seal can weigh up to, is it 200 pounds, 600 pounds, 1,200 pounds, or 2,000 pounds? We have a few more seconds to get our answers locked in. And then there we go. That was quick. Good job, crew. 1,200 pounds is absolutely correct, with the males being much smaller. Let's go to the podium. In third place, we've got the elated shark. Second place, the yellow rabbit. And holding down that top spot, the daring stork held on for the last few questions. If you are the classroom containing the daring stork, send me a message to classroom@darwin200.com. We have a gift voucher from Amazon for your classroom. So classroom@darwin200.com. All right, time to change gears. We're going to spend a few minutes doing a little bit of Q&A action. I'm just going to shut down the Kahoot on my end so we don't hear the music anymore. All right, there we go. So yeah, I see some questions in the chat, but again, don't be shy. Don't be afraid to send in some questions. We still have a few minutes with Sarah. Sarah, the first question I have here, this is from Maddie. Maddie would like to know, what's the hardest part about fieldwork?
Maddie, that's a really good question. Every type of fieldwork is so different. And the hardest part is that you actually don't know what to expect the first time you go somewhere. So it's really hard to prepare mentally about what you're getting into if you've never done it before. And some of the places we're going, there's never been a field team that's done what we've done before. And so there's a lot of things we have to figure out and supplies we figure out we need once we're there. So for example, something silly is like, we didn't bring enough dish towels the first time we went to our field site in Chile. And it turns out dish towels are so important, like so useful for cleaning things, for drying things. It was wet all the time. So like we needed way more towels for drying our binoculars, our glasses, our sunglasses, all these things. And so we made a note and brought so many more round too. But I think the hardest part is just trying to predict what you need in a situation you've never been in before.
All right. Very cool. We have some fourth graders in Toronto who are curious about, have you ever had a surprising or unexpected encounter with a leopard seal?
This past field season, so I went, there was a really amazing team. We went to Chile. And while we were there, usually when we're working with leopard seals in the wild, the vast majority of the time they're sleeping. They've been eating, then they've hauled out, they're resting on ice or sometimes land, but in most of the cases where we're working on ice, and they're sleeping and they're not really doing a lot of things in the water. But there was a male who was super curious about our small boat that we were on, was swimming around and looking at us. And that it was really cool, but it was also like, that's a top predator that is swimming. And like, I'm making eye contact with it while it's in the water where they're very fast and agile. And it was just an experience unlike I've had before with the species. So it was really neat.
All right. That's very cool. Mrs. Barnes' seventh graders would like to know if you've ever seen them hunting.
No, I haven't yet. I have dear friends who study leopard seals who have seen them hunting all the time, especially like taking down like small Antarctic fur seal pups. And one of my friends has all these videos of them stalking prey and pulling pups into the water. I haven't seen it yet. So I've seen lots of videos and photos, but not with my eyes, unfortunately. But it's something I would like very much.
You know, that's not an uncommon story. I have a good friend who studies jaguars, and it was over a decade before he saw one in the wild. He obviously saw them in camera traps he was putting out, obviously in captivity. But yeah, it's total luck of the draw. Whereas I was out in Peru last year and I saw one in the wild when we were going.
That is exactly how it works. I think like the more you care about it too, the less likely you are. That's not actually true. It just feels like that sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a familiar story. Oh, it's a good question. William wants to know what their status is. Are they threatened, endangered? You know, what should we be doing to protect them?
That's a really great question. So right now they're listed. So a lot of times when you're asking that sort of question, the best place to resource for that is the IUCN Red List, and it will give you the most up-to-date status on pretty much every animal on the planet or species on the planet. Leopard seals are listed as least concern, but part of that is because we just don't have a lot of information on them to suggest that there are changes or threats to them. But we know that they're living in a rapidly changing area, potentially dependent on ice. And so all of the things that you as an individual can do to help slow down, stop climate change, and contributing and stopping pollution, single-use plastics, all of that helps leopard seals and so many other species. I've been to Antarctica, one of the most remote places on the planet, and there was trash on the beach. So it just speaks to it's a global problem. So those things that affect all of the other species you know about also affect leopard seals. So being a good human and being a good steward of the environment helps leopard seals.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, speaking to that, I was on a deep sea expedition. We were using robots 4 kilometers under the water and finding trash. So places no human's ever seen, but our Dr. Pepper cans and our paint cans and our fishing nets were down there waiting for us to find. So yeah. Okay. Our class in Toronto has a follow-up question here. They are really curious about the process of putting a satellite tag on a top predator.
Yeah. Okay. So remember how I mentioned permits earlier? So many permits are involved. Lots of really experienced, trained people to do this. Obviously, the number one concern if you're working with an animal and doing any sort of procedure where you're going to give drugs to the animal to put them to sleep for a little bit so you can work with them safely is animal safety and human safety. And so we do a lot of work to make sure that the animal is sleeping away from the water, that they're healthy, that they need to be away from other animals, which for leopard seals isn't really a problem because they're not normally by other animals. And then we have specific drugs that we've worked with veterinarians to develop that we can give the animal. It puts them to sleep they're actually snoring while they're asleep and we're working with them. A leopard seal snoring sounds kind of like a dog snoring. It's pretty amazing. And it takes about 10 minutes for the chemicals to go into effect. The animal's asleep. We can then go safely work with the animal, take all sorts of measurements, samples, attach the instrument, get this gold mine of information. And then there are what are called reversal agents for those drugs, where we can give it to the animal and it wakes back up like nothing ever happened. And at that point, we've backed up, we're hiding, we're out of the way. And it kind of wakes up, looks around, and then usually goes back to sleep.
All right. Very cool. I think we'll squeeze one more in here. Carter would like to know, you've mentioned that there's still so much to decode. If you could crack one mystery, just have the answer.
Oh,
can you do that? What mystery would it be?
Oh, that is like the hardest question. Oh my gosh, that's such a good one. Okay, so I want to know why females are larger. I want to know if it's because, like, what benefit females get from being larger, because that's not something we see in a lot of marine mammals. And so if I could crack one code, I think it's answering that question. But I have so many other questions I want to know the answer to too. That's a tricky one.
Yeah. Well, so everybody, scientists are famous for their hypothesis. Do you have a theory you're working with right now?
Yeah. So my hypothesis is that, so the usual answer is that if you see females that are larger, that like, oh, it's related to breeding and like better support for the babies. I don't think that's the only answer for this species. I think that they're doing something unique with feeding and holding feeding territories, and there's more to it, more like hyenas, like spotted hyenas, where you have this like really cool, like female-based kind of society. I think leopard seals are more on that end of things, and it's related to like energy storage, success, holding good territories, and survival.
All right. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, Sarah, you've given me something to be excited about, the tiny possibility that I might get to see a leopard seal in South Africa.
Keep your eye out.
I'm going to definitely keep my eye out, and I will take loads of pictures for
Please
spot
take
stuff.
all of the photos and then send them to me.
Absolutely. I will get as many as I can of our friend in South Georgia for you as well, and I'll send those your way. But Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today. It was such a good fit. You're doing really cool research, and I hope the next time we connect, it's from the shore in Antarctica, maybe from the Zodiac or something.
That sounds perfect. Thank you so much. It was lovely chatting with everybody.
All right. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Bye.
Okay, very cool. So that's a great way to start. This is session number, officially, this is World's Most Exciting Classroom number 78. Unofficially, we're probably over 100 because we've done live stuff in the field in Rio, in Australia, in Galapagos. So, you know, those ones, we don't officially give them a number. Plus, if you add in the ones that we've done in Australia and New Zealand, we're well over 100 World's Most Exciting Classroom events since the Oosterschelde set sail all the way back in August 2023. So a few things to do. I'd like to share the results from our rubber egg experiment. But before I do that, just a little announcement. You might remember a couple weeks ago, we connected with Sarah and Jess from the Seize the Day ocean rowing team. They were preparing to start rowing from Peru to sail unsupported, or sorry, not sail, to row unsupported across the Pacific Ocean to Australia. It's probably going to take them like 6 months to do it. I was working with them a little bit to make sure we got the Starlink unit working so that they can connect with us from the boat, so that they can also send updates and such from the boat. We got that working, and they set sail just the other day. I have a little video clip I want to share with you so you can see what it looked like when Jess and Miriam started rowing on their massive, massive journey.
Yeah, so I'm Miriam.
Oops, I just realized I picked the wrong video. I picked the video of their interview they did with us. Give me 1 second to pick the right one here on my desktop. We want the video where they are rowing because they are off on their adventure. Here it is. All right, so there we go. That was them starting to row. You remember they predicted that they'd have some boats following them, you know, kind of a send-off. And so there you can see several boats following them. They followed them for a couple miles offshore. They had the music going. So pretty exciting time. The last update I read from them was that they're kind of settling into the rowing, trying to get into a pattern. They're tired, obviously, but they're going to get into the routine and they're going to continue along the way. Hopefully we'll have them join us in the world's most exciting classroom again, maybe once or twice before July comes our way. So 2 weeks ago, we had our rubber egg experiment. Let's take a look at those results right now.
Welcome back, everyone. How did you get on with your egg experiments? Well, mine have been sitting in vinegar for over 2 days, and I can see quite a lot has happened. These two, if you remember, the red and the blue ones, were the hard-boiled eggs. These two were the raw eggs with soft centers. So let's take them out and have a little look. Wow, look, you can see the shell has completely dissolved. I'll take out the blue one as well. Look, the shell is completely gone, and just the outer skin of the shell is still visible. You can see underneath it, that's the actual egg there. Those bubbles that we noticed bubbling away, that was carbon dioxide as the vinegar reacted with the calcium carbonate of the shell. And if you look closely, the shell has completely gone. This is the white of the egg inside. Although it doesn't look very tasty, I don't think I'm going to try and eat these eggs. Now let's look at the raw eggs. These have grown in size. And the shells on these have also completely disappeared. Why do you think the raw eggs have grown to be larger than the hard-boiled eggs? Well, the answer is that without the shell, the eggs have expanded in size due to osmosis. Water molecules can now permeate the membrane of the egg, expanding the egg in size. Whereas with the hard-boiled eggs, they're already cooked and hard-boiled, so they can't really grow very much. If you look at them side by side, the raw eggs are noticeably bigger than the hard-boiled eggs. There's another interesting observation you can make with these eggs. If you look at the raw eggs and put a torch under them, you can actually see right the way through them. I can see the yolk up here at the top as a dark shadow towards the top of this egg. You can't do that with a normal egg in its shell. I don't think we'll be able to see through the hard-boiled eggs. Nope, they're completely opaque. We can't see through them. Now let's see if our eggs will bounce. Normal eggs would just crack, but these eggs with their shells removed might do differently. Let's have a look. Oh, the hard-boiled eggs bounce quite well. Let's see what happens with the raw eggs. Oh! Okay, so the raw eggs just smashed, but the hard-boiled eggs bounce quite well. See if you can make your very own bouncing boiled eggs in this excellent experiment. Please do send in photos. I'd love to see how you get on and if your results are the same as mine. Now let's find out who won this week's prize. Thank you for watching.
All right. So there we go. That was our rubber egg experiment. If you remember, a few months ago, we did a similar experiment where we dissolved the shells and then we put one in a water solution and another one in a sugar solution. And we had very different results. We had osmosis in the water solution where the water rushed in. It permeated that membrane and the size of the egg grew. But in the sugar solution, we had the opposite. We had water moving out of the egg, and that caused it to shrivel and shrink much smaller. This experiment is a really good one to demonstrate ocean acidification, which we've talked about a few times. As we put more acid into our water, it dissolves calcium carbonate, which much marine life like crustaceans and coral need to help develop their skeletons, their shells. So seeing that, with the eggs and that calcium carbonate being dissolved, you can kind of see that a little bit quicker and see the results of what is happening as our ocean becomes more acidic. So that was our experiment. We're not going to do a new one this week because things are going to be crazy the next 2 or 3 weeks with me being in South Africa. doing live stuff from the field. So we won't focus on the curiosities or the experiments for the next few weeks. We were in New Zealand last night. So last night we had our live event for the Australia, New Zealand, that part of the world classrooms. And we had Emma Bean join us from the National Kiwi Hatchery in New Zealand on the North Island. And we had a tour of their hatchery facility. So I'm going to play that clip of that for you right now. I'm going to have to share my screen right from YouTube because the video is so fresh. I wasn't able to download it yet. It's still kind of processing and uploading on YouTube. So I'm just going to share my screen and we will play that file. So just give me 1 second to get that up on the screen. World's most exciting classroom. There it is. And we'll go full screen and hit play. I'm going to bring Emma Bean in from backstage right now. Here we go. Hey, Emma, how are you?
Joe, yeah, really well, thank you, and welcome to our new location. So we are the same National Kiwi Hatchery, but since we last saw you, we've moved to a new site.
All right, very cool. Am I still right? Is it still on the North Island, or did you jump all the way to the south?
No, it's still on the North Island, and we're just 5 minutes from our old location, but we're doing so well, saving lots of kiwi that we needed more space. So we've moved to a new location where we've got room to have more kiwi growing up to that stone-proof weight.
All right, very cool. Well, I am going to let you take over in just a moment, Emma, but I do want to give a shout out to the classrooms who are joining us at Norcourt Public School, Primary School in South Australia. Just send me a message in the chat. Let me know if you got in okay. I know you're joining a little bit different today, but send a message in the chat. Let me know if you got in okay. And Emma, I'm going to let you take over for a bit.
Wonderful, thanks, Joe. Well, here and welcome everyone here to the National Kiwi Hatchery based in Rotorua, New Zealand. Now, as you might be aware from the learnings through DARWIN200 already, back before humans arrived to New Zealand, there were no land mammals, so it was all birds. New Zealand was essentially birdland with some reptiles, amphibians, insects thrown in that would measure. There were 2 land mammals and they were both bats. So strictly speaking, 2 land mammals, but mainly birdland. And because of that, all of our bird species in New Zealand have evolved in a really unique way. So it means that some of the roles that mammals would typically fill in countries around the world have been filled by birds, and kiwi are no different to that. So kiwi are nocturnal. They are flightless, as Joe said, and they spend a lot of time on the ground foraging for insects and fallen berries. So a similar role from, say, the UK, where I originate from, would be the badger. And so the kiwi is filling those unique spaces within New Zealand's forests. Now, because New Zealand was birdland, a lot of their responses to threats were very different. So natural threats would have been other avian threats like the now extinct harped eagle. The best thing to do is to freeze. Now, unfortunately, with us humans arriving, the original settlers, the Maori, they brought over the dog and unintentionally the rat. But us Europeans, unfortunately, did far more damage by bringing over the mustelid family. So that's the ferret, the stoat, and the weasel. And we also brought over other things like the possum, the fur industry. So when people originally arrived and settled in New Zealand, so similar time when Darwin was travelling in 1835, they estimate there were about 12 million kiwi. Now we've got an estimated population of 68,000. But it's not all sad news, because we've come up with the solution to this problem. So we've got an intensive predator control network around New Zealand's forestry, but we also do something called Operation Nest Egg. And that's what we do here at the National Kiwi Hatchery. We work with projects all around the North Island. They monitor the birds in the wild. They bring us the eggs. We incubate them, hatch them, and raise them to what is deemed a stone-proof weight of 1 kilogram. And at that weight, instead of just having the somber statistic of only having a 5% survival rate in the wild, by going through Operation Nest Egg, we turn that statistic around, and instead of 5%, it's 65% survival. So we basically keep them safe when they're most vulnerable, release them back out into the forest when they've reached that stow-proof weight of a kilo, and by doing that, we've helped increase the population, and we've actually, in the time that I've been at the hatchery, we've celebrated moving up a threat status. So kiwi are no longer on the endangered list, they're actually conservation dependent, which is fantastic. It means what we're doing is working, we just need to do more of it. So come with me through to the hatchery and I'll show you a little bit around the space that we do this work in. We do host visitors on our hatchery around the hatchery, and that's a really great way that you can help us support kiwi. So come and visit and see the work that we do. This is the egg arrivals room. So this is where the field workers bring us the eggs in the first place. Now, the kiwi is about the same size as a chicken, and as Joe mentioned, they're flightless. So they're actually quite a lot heavier than flighted birds. They're part of that ratite family, which means that they don't need to have air pockets in their bones to make them light for flight. So kiwi, for the male kiwi, they're about 2.2 kilos, and the females are slightly larger at 2.8. The reason they're a little bit larger is the size of this egg. So you can see here just a chicken egg for comparison. We've got, you'll be far more familiar with this egg on my left, and then the kiwi egg here is typically about 440 grams, so much larger. And what we do when we first bring the eggs to us is we would use a torch to candle the egg, and that tells us what's going on inside the egg. And the keepers here, it takes about 2 years to be a fully trained kiwi keeper. And by that time, we can interpret the shadows that we see and age the eggs within 1 or 2 days. So if they are viable, we'll have determined that through candling, we will then wash the eggs and move them through into our incubation room. So looking in the incubation room now, we've actually just moved the last egg that we've got of the season through this morning. So this room is actually empty at the moment. Kiwi lay, or brown kiwi lay, 2 eggs in the first clutch, 2 eggs in the second clutch, and sometimes a third clutch. So we've finished both the first and second clutch for the season, but we may get some more eggs coming back in for that third clutch. So what we do in here is we check the eggs twice a week to make sure that they're progressing as we'd expect. But most of the work is done in those boxes behind us there. So those are our incubators. They keep the eggs at a set temperature of 33.5 degrees Celsius and a set humidity. And they also turn the eggs for us. And so we need to turn the eggs so that the proteins in the albumin or the egg white get moved around the veins that are on the inside of the egg, and those aren't moving, so we need to move the albumin inside there so that the egg can get the nutrients that it needs throughout development. And of course, those membranes on the inside of the shell are also where you would get gas exchange through the pores of the shell. When the egg gets closer to hatch, it gets to the point where those membranes are no longer getting enough oxygen for that growing embryo inside the egg. And so the bird will actually poke its bill into that air pocket, and then it will start breathing air through its little air sacs or lungs for the first time. So we can actually, as kiwi keepers, we can hear those eggs vocalize on the bench, which is really something very special. And they'll also be moving. They'll be making that egg wobble on the bench. Now, I've got some footage that we can share with you here. This is of kiwi candling, kiwi egg candling. So that's that light source being passed through the egg. You can see the veins on the top, the foot kicking here, and you can see the yolk underneath, that yellow yolk, that needs to be internalized in through his navel prior to hatch. Here you can see this one, it's already externally picked, and so for this egg, it's actually moving through to the next room here, which is the hatch room. So you can see on these doors here that this is how the embryo is really quite squashed up in that egg, poking its bill here into what would be the air cell, and it started breathing air through its little lungs for the first time. So this is the last egg that we've got for the season. We may get a couple more, but the last known egg, and this guy is just a couple of days away from hatch. So kiwi eggs are actually incubated for an incredibly long time. They're incubated for 78 days. Most other bird species are incubated for about 20 to 25 days. So the incubation time is a long time, and the egg itself is large. And those two things combined mean that when the egg hatches, it is known as a precocious offspring. So that means that this chick is like a miniature adult. It's fully feathered, and everything is instinctive. We don't need to worry about it needing to be taught by the parents. And in actual fact, when this chick hatches, it will only stay in the nest for about 5 or 7 days. So this egg doesn't need any post-hatch care other than keeping it warm for a couple of days while those feathers dry off, and the chick ventures out into the wild. Everything is already known in his head how to probe and forage naturally. So you can see here behind me that we've hatched 81 chicks already this season. We typically hatch about 100 a year. This year's been a little bit quieter, and we think that that's because previous years have been so strong, coupled with a bit of a drought this season has just impacted the number of invertebrates available to those females developing that large egg. And something that's really interesting for those of you that don't know too much about kiwi, it's actually the male kiwi that incubates the egg, because the female, as I mentioned, she can lay up to 6 of these eggs each year, which means it's actually the dad's job to incubate the eggs. So we've had a milestone at our new location. We had not only moved sites, but we also celebrated last year our 2,500th chick, but we're not dwelling on that too much longer because we're already up at 2,600 eggs. And that is purely because of the hard work that the people do out in the field, our team here, and of course our visitors for coming and learning about what we do, and also the revenue that is created from visiting our hatchery goes straight back, 100% back to the Kiwi hatchery. So what we're going to do is we're going to move through from this egg into the brooder room, because in that room the 2-day-old chick would move into its very own brooder with a heat plate. That heat plate emanates what dad would be doing for the first week or so. We actually remove it at day 6 because they no longer need any of that extra warmth. And then typically they would feed on their own. So come through and we'll learn about our Kiwi brooder room. So here we have fellow Kiwi keeper, Eve, hand feeding Teatin. Now, you may think, well, I've just said that this bird doesn't need to be taught anything. But that's because in the wild, I mentioned earlier, kiwi forage in the ground for insects and fallen berries. And insects move. Now you can see that they've got a very long bill, and at the tip of that bill, they've got this extra 6th sense, almost like a spidey sense. And he's using that there to pick up those pieces, doing incredibly well. But in the hatchery, we feed them this special diet, which has been developed by nutritionists at Massey University. And this gives them the very best start to life, because This food has all the micronutrients that the kiwi need when they're growing. In the wild, they'd have a whole ecosystem worth of invertebrates that they'd be able to get all those nutrients. But we use this diet while they're here to make sure that they get that very best start. And because it doesn't move, occasionally our job is to wiggle the food in front of their bill so that they can realize that this is food. You can see here that the chick is actually also quite interested in Eve's fingers, and that's because they've got a pulse. It's being picked up by those sensory pits in the tip of the bill. But other than that, so this chick hatched on the 29th of March. So this chick isn't even 2 weeks old and is already crouching, probing, foraging, so interested, would be out in the wild on its own. But because of that, it does actually make them quite vulnerable. And so this is why we need to keep them safe here at the hatchery. Once they've established onto the food and they have reattained their hatch weight, so we weigh them daily and we actually see a reduction in weight for that first week or so. And that's as they're utilizing that yolk that they internalized prior to hatch. And then we see an increase up above their hatch weight. So the average egg size is about 440. This chick hatched at 404 grams. So this guy came out of quite a big egg and then regained back up post the hatch weight. That's when we will then give the chick a little microchip, same as your cat or dog, and that is for close range identification, so that when this chick goes back out into the wild and then may get refound again, we'll be able to tell whether it was a wild hatch chick, which is actually unlikely because, as I said, those wild hatch chicks unfortunately only have a 5% survival because of those introduced predators, or that it's come through the hatchery. If we want to monitor the chick, we then actually have to put something different on, which is a transmitter onto the leg of that kiwi, and that's how we will go around with an aerial and monitor those chicks in the wild. But we've been doing this work for so long that we know that the survival is really, really good, and we actually want to leave them to it. So we typically don't release them with a transmitter anymore. But if we want to restart the program, we will use specially trained conservation dogs. These dogs, again, it takes about 2 years to train these guys up. They get free flights with Air New Zealand. They get their very own wage, and they actually have a better social media following than I do, Joe. So they're incredibly important dogs in New Zealand, and these specially trained dogs can go out and find the kiwi in the first place because they've got such excellent sense of smell, and then us humans just put that transmitter on so that with a not as good a sense of smell, we can find them. So that's O&E in a nutshell. That is from start to finish, finding the bird, bringing the eggs to us, keeping them safe when they're vulnerable, and releasing them back into the forest where they came from. So any questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that was so cool to be able to see kind of the whole process from coming in to incubating and then hatching and being fed. That's really, really cool. We're going to get some questions coming through in the chat. So if you do have some questions, don't be shy. Use the chat sidebar and send us in some questions. The classes were wondering, I know we can't go into the room, but does the camera zoom a little bit? They're just wondering if they could get a tiny bit of a closer view if the camera zooms.
It doesn't, I'm afraid. Sorry, we've zoomed it in as much as we can. We can perhaps send a photo through for you of a closer image so that you guys can see, because you're right, it is really special. Eve can come to the window now that the feed is finished. So that's I guess an old-fashioned way of zooming, Joe. Sure. But she can then see you've got the eyes, the dark eyes, the ear opening behind them, and right at the tip you might be able to see the nostrils at the tip. You can also see those whiskers going into the face, and those strong, powerful legs. So now the food's out of the way, he's trying to get away and go back to bed. So we'll let him go back to bed. Yeah, whilst he thinks he can defend himself, he's only about 300 grams at the moment. And so, yeah, unfortunately, we need to get him 3 times that size, Joe, so that he can then defend himself against the number one predator for kiwi chicks, which is that stone.
Right. There we go. So that was our little visit to the National Kiwi Hatchery in New Zealand on the North Island. One thing we learned during the Q&A was that they've been doing such a great job of conservation. So 2 things. One, getting rid of the predators. There's a huge goal to have New Zealand predator-free by 2050, which is a massive goal if you think about it, because humans have brought so many predators ranging from cats to stoats to possums. The list goes on. Mice. And so what they're doing is they're clearing entire areas of predators so they can release some of the native wildlife back where it belongs. And they're doing incredible work. And then places like the Kiwi Hatchery, which are hatching the eggs, ensuring they survive to adulthood, and then putting them back into the wild. So kind of a 2-pronged approach at conservation. And they're doing great work in New Zealand. Such great work that just recently, the kiwi has been moved from endangered to threatened. Which is a huge step on the road to recovery. I think they estimate there's somewhere around 65,000 kiwis now in the wild in New Zealand. So that's a great start, and hopefully those numbers continue. So the last thing we'll do today is our curiosity of the week. Let's take a look at last week's answer. I'm going to share that video with you right now.
Everyone, last week I asked you to try and identify this object here. Could you work out what it is or which way round it goes? Well, believe it or not, this is the tooth of a mosasaur, an ancient marine reptile that lived around 100 million years ago. My question about which way round it goes was a bit of a trick, because to be honest, I'm not sure if this was a tooth on the bottom jaw of the animal pointing upwards, or a tooth on the top of the jaw pointing downwards. Either way though, you can see that it was a sharp tooth, like a knife, showing that mosasaurs were clearly carnivores. Mosasaurs are actually a group of animals. There are many different species. The smallest were thought to be about 1 meter long. The very biggest were thought to be over 17 meters in length. I don't know which exact species this is from, but clearly looking at the size of the tooth, this must have been a big one, many meters long. I wonder what animals this mosasaur ate and what creatures this tooth tore apart. Did you correctly guess that this was a tooth? And did you work out that it was from a mosasaur? Let's now find out who won this week's prize. Thank you for watching and for taking part.
All right, so there we go. That was last week's curiosity, a mosasaur tooth. We've got to give a shout out to Mr. Cameron's crew in Red Deer, Alberta. We had lots of right answers, but when we pick a name, that was the name that came out. So a shout out to that class. We'll have a gift card to send your way digitally. And there we go. We will be pausing the world's most exciting classroom for a few weeks because I will be in South Africa. We'll do live events from the field. There'll be a little bit short notice because we have to think about the weather and the state of the ocean to get out and do some of those live events. But I will share when those are happening in the newsletters. We'll try and get them out on social media. And I'll also email the educators who've been taking part in the DARWIN200 events as well. So lots of ways we'll make sure you know what's happening in South Africa. The last thing we have to do is a shout out to our sponsors, supporters, and partners, without whom we wouldn't be sailing around the world. The young Darwin leaders wouldn't be making their way to South Africa right now. We wouldn't have the world's most exciting classroom and the research we've been doing around the world, like the eDNA research we've been doing ever since Fiji, would not be happening. So shout out to our partners. To the classrooms and those tuning in, we will see you over the next few weeks at kind of some random times. I'll also put out some recorded content from the field on the DARWIN200 YouTube page. So we'll make sure that you know everything that's happening out in the field over the next few weeks. For now, we'll sign out, and I hope everyone has a great rest of the week.